Hey guys, what's up, Dental Marketer fam, the TDM fam? So glad to be with you today. I'm Joshua Scott, owner and CEO of Studio 88, here with you, Columbus, Ohio, in our offices. Wanted to bring a, lesson, presentation, module to your crew today on marketing your story and what that looks like. And I actually want to work in some specific ground marketing, like how to share your story through ground marketing as well. So before we get into that, I grew up in south side of LA. Actually, my parents moved there. I was born in Columbus, interestingly enough, but before I even turned 1 year old, my parents moved to southern LA. And I think my dad just always had this like wanted to go to California thing in him, you know? And so as soon as they realized they were having their first kid, it was like, okay, this is it. We gotta go, gotta make this happen. What's interesting is when I say I grew up south of LA, a lot of people will say, oh, like where at? Like Orange County, Irvine. And no, I actually grew up off of Compton Avenue on the south side of LA, just actually one block outside of Compton, on a little street called Texaco. And so to give you some perspective, this was during the 80s. So, you know, straight out of Compton was literally straight down the street. And while I remember having all these fond memories of growing up as a young boy in the California sun, I also remember violence. I remember uncertainty. I would walk to my elementary school every morning through this long row of this high barbed wire like security fence that was meant to protect the kids on their way to school. My mom managed the apartment project that we lived in. So I always felt like I had this inside information into robberies, arson attempts, like domestic violence, you know, police being called in the middle of the night. And so that was a lot of the childhood that I grew up with. One particular memory sticks out to me. It was a Sunday morning. My mom loaded up my brother and my sister and myself in the car. Sunday morning on our way to church. We're cruising through an intersection when a drunk driver runs a red light at about 55 miles an hour and just blindsides our car. None of us knew what happened, but the impact of that sent us flipping through the intersection. Actually, the car did 2.5 rotations before it ended up upside down. And like I said, when you're cruising through the intersection, you don't even realize it happens. Next thing I know, I realize I'm hanging upside down in the back of the car, strapped to the ceiling by my seatbelt. And my mom is yelling out like, Joshua, are you okay? And it was almost like I could hear somebody talking, but it was almost like that Charlie Brown cartoon where you can't make out the words. You know, it's like wah, wah, wah. My vision was blurry. And I remember having trouble focusing, not knowing if it's just from the impact of the collision or if it's actually the car filling with smoke and haze. I looked down and my brother is laying on what's now the ceiling of the car, unconscious. At some point he had come out of his car seat during the collision and ended up on the roof of the car at the bottom. Fortunately, he would be okay. It was only some minor bumps and bruises. But what I remember was as I'm hanging there, a large man with a beard comes over, he runs over to the car, kneels down by my window next to me, and he yells into the car, "Are you okay?" And I just shake my head. He instructs me to undo my seatbelt, which I do without even thinking, and I fall straight down to the roof of the car. He reaches in with both hands, grabs me, pulls me out through that shattered window, grabs me up in a bear hug, and runs me over to the corner gas station where I'd be safe. At this point, people had come out of the gas station. They're watching. Crowds are gathering around. People are running out to the car to help. Cars stopped all around the intersection. Smoke coming up. You know, the sound of sirens in the distance. And I remember as a young boy sitting there and kind of taking in that entire scene and just watching such a wreck. Guys, I don't know about you. Sometimes when it comes to dental marketing, I think that the whole thing is a wreck. Sometimes I feel like the whole thing is upside down, and maybe you haven't had that experience, but I came into dentistry a little bit differently. I didn't come into through the traditional route of, you know, clinical, or it was in my family or anything like that. So I think when I looked at dentistry, I always felt like it was a profession that was inspiring. It was innovative. It was beautiful. It's this, you know, humans serving humans, especially in a climate, kind of post-COVID climate. like we have. And yet when I looked at dental marketing, that story was never being told. And I asked the question, why? Like, why not? Are there some restrictions on that? You know, is our creativity, can we only say certain things? Are we creatively limited to how we can market a dental practice? And I realized that at some point that nobody cared to step up and to raise their hand and say, we can do better. We can tell a better story. And so when I got into it, that was what I wanted to do, was let's tell a better story through dentistry. And I think one of the main problems that faces dental marketing when we look at it, and one of the reasons I step back sometimes and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is such a wreck, it's all upside down, is a lack of connection. And especially as we've gotten into digital marketing, I think we've lost in a lot of ways that human connecting with human, that speaking human aspect of what marketing is. And we've replaced it with efficiency and automation and technology. And all those things are amazing, but marketing is about communication. It's about connecting with somebody on the other side of that screen, much like you and I are sitting here talking today. And so, you know, take for example, like let's have some fun here. Think about direct mail for a moment. The average direct mail response is 1/4%. So this means if you send out 10,000 direct mail pieces, like we can automate that, we can make it efficient, we can make it high tech, we blast out tens of thousands of direct mail pieces right to a neighborhood. For every 10,000 that you send out, you should get 25 new patients. And if that happens, all of us in advertising world kind of clap our hands and say, well done, that was a great campaign. And that would be a really good return on that. The other way to look at that is you sent out 9,975 pieces that got thrown away. 9,975 people either looked at it and felt like it was irrelevant and trashed it, got annoyed with it. You took a hit to your brand and your name recognition on it, but we got 25 new patients. And that's a good deal. And so even though we can automate it, and even though it can become efficient, it can become high tech, doesn't always mean that it should. And the best marketing is marketing that tells a story. Marketing consultant and author Hugh McClid says if we talk to people the way advertising talks to people, they'd punch us in the face. And I think it's true, you know, that's the attitude sometimes is let's blast it, let's use numbers, let's, you know, send out 1 million emails because we know that we get X% that converts. But in the end, I think the questions we're not asking are, does it connect? What's the damage being done to our brand? What's happening to our name recognition and our story along the way? And so what I want to walk you guys through today is really what I call the laws of digital connection, okay? And it's really about creating marketing that connects. Marketing in its basis form is communication. We as a practice are communicating to potential patients in our neighborhood. So let's get real big picture, because I think sometimes that when it comes to digital, people it can get confusing, it can get complicated and complex. I mean, we got algorithm changes and social media platforms and all these things, like where do you start and what's important and all that, right? So let's pull up, let's go 30,000 feet here and look at digital marketing from a very high level view. If we do that, we're gonna see three points that I'm gonna walk you through today, okay? Point number one, discover your story. So the first step in this whole process, you wanna market? Awesome. You want to do Facebook ads? Great. You want to put up a billboard? Awesome. The first step in this process is discover the story, okay? A lot of times we don't know what to market because we haven't figured out the story. And so I used to joke back in the Yellow Pages days, the Yellow Page rep would come by and say, it's that time of year again, like what do you want to, how do you want to adjust your Yellow Page ad? People are like, what should I put on it? I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, what's the story, right? Like, we want to market, but let's back up and figure out what that story is first. Once we have that, number two, now we can tell the story, okay? Now let's tell it. Let's get it out there. Let's have a website that communicates that. Let's have photography, video, social media channels that are not only just talking about our services and the profession of dentistry, but it's talking about our story and our values. And then last, once we've got that, now let's share it. Now let's share it. We've discovered the story. It's a great story. We've told it in a way that's accurate. Now let's share it, okay? And so whenever I see issues with marketing, To be honest, I can troubleshoot this right here, and I can find the breakdown, and I can usually figure out the problem. So for example, we have lots of clients, probably some of our favorite clients have this amazing story. Like they've discovered it. They have this really great patient experience. A lot of times they'll come to us and say, Josh, we're like the best kept secret in our town. And I'm like, that's awesome. Like, got it. I understand what you mean. Really great patient experience. They've never told the story. They've never told it. So their website doesn't represent that. Their social media doesn't represent that. The photography, they're using stock photos. Of course that doesn't represent their story and their experience. And so what we have to do is go, look, this is a really great story here. Let's tell it. Like it's not enough to say you're different. We have to show people that you're different and tell them that story. And so we can help with that. The other part is sometimes we have people that come to us and they want to share the story. And they say, we want to run Google ads or Facebook ads. And yet when I look at their website, there's nothing there. There's not a story. They haven't told it well, but they want to get into sharing the story. And the problem with that is we can drive traffic all day to a website, but if it's not going to connect with people around values, around story, then there is a huge percentage of that investment that will never be realized because of that, because it falls short, because it doesn't convert. And so typically I can see it when it breaks down. If any of these pieces are missing, your marketing won't be as effective. So I want to walk you through these 3 points. Like I said, we're going to talk about discovering your story, some tips, some keys to help you do that and dial that in. We're going to talk about telling your story, how to best do that in 2020, like the hub of your digital presence, creating that story. And then we're going to talk about sharing it and how to do that through ground marketing. We're going to have some fun with that one. All right. So let's jump in. Step number 1, discover the story. So when I work with clients or when they sit down, we actually have a whole process here at Studio 88. We call it our brand creator. If you've been a client of ours, you've walked through it. It's a custom workbook we've put together with some exercises to help you through this process. But if I was sitting down with you maybe at dinner or at a bar over a drink and we were talking, I'd ask you some short questions to really help you think this through. First thing I would ask you, what relationships or experiences bring you the most energy? What relationships, experiences bring you the most energy? Like, sure, you're a dentist. Sure, you own a dental practice. But what relationships, what experiences, what things bring you energy? I'll tell you from me, personally, I love working in dental. I love having a dental marketing agency. Probably what brings me the most energy is leading a team. I love leading a team. I love working with creatives. I love the challenge of leading people that are highly creative, giving them the space and the freedom and the environment, the atmosphere to actually produce in a way that's consistent, it's predictable, it's healthy. I love working with millennials as well. I know they can get a bad rap sometimes, but man, I love that generation and the passion and the energy that they bring to a team. And so for me, those are the things that bring me energy, right? So what brings you energy? This is one of our clients. This is Dr. Ashley Hovez of Smile and Company. She has a startup practice in the Folsom, California area, right outside of Sacramento. Not so much a startup anymore. She's 2.5 years, almost 3 years into it. I remember when she first called me, and I was walking outside of my house in front, and it was about 6 or 7 o'clock at night because she was in California. And she was walking through this, and she says, Josh, am I crazy? Like, is doing a startup crazy? Because in case you don't know, California has the highest capita dentists, per capita than any other state in the country. And I told her, I said, Ashley, if you can be different, you can compete. If you're gonna go out there and build the same old dental practice that's in California, you're gonna have trouble because there is so much competition. But if you can be different, if you can stand out, if you can tell a different story, you can compete. And so she told me, she said, Josh, I want to create something. It's dentistry, it's different. I want it to be more wine bar, more micro, like gastro pub, more, she's not too far outside of Napa Valley. And so something that feels high-end customer service, resort type feel. And she came up with the concept for Smile and Company. Watch this.
I hate going to the dentist. I think it's scary. And I think that white coat syndrome is real. If we know that people are anxious to see you and you show up wearing the white coat, you're already setting yourself up with a barrier. I think it would be awesome if we all took a step back and brought personality back, brought laughter back. When they come here, they are going to be receiving the highest standards of care in the most compassionate environment possible. I want it to be warm and inviting, but I also want it to be fun. High energy music and laughter in the hallways. That is Smile & Co. If you have never been to our space and you'd like to check it out, come on by, bring your friends, let's have a party. We can't wait to meet you.
All right, so you want to go check out her site, smileandcompany.com. Also, she does a great job on social media at Smile and Company on Instagram. Find her the same place on Facebook as well. So number one, what brings you energy, right? Second question I would ask you is, what are the moments in your life that have shaped you? What moments have shaped you? One of the things that's interesting about me that you probably don't know is I actually went to seminary. Like, that was the route I took. And I know that most people don't get to dentistry from seminary, but I did. I tell people from ministry to dentistry, like that's how I got here. But there was a point in that process where I realized it wasn't going the way I thought, and ended up into a situation, I felt it was toxic, it was unhealthy, and needed to make a decision to step out. And the whole time I felt like I was kind of crazy, but there was this voice inside of me going, you need to make this decision. Like, all my friends were working in this position. We were working for somebody who had this big vision, wanted to build something amazing. And the whole time there's this like voice inside going, there's a different route, there's a different way. And so I decided to step away from that. And that's when I fell into dentistry with a practice management company that's based here in Columbus, Ohio. They have a national presence, and I went to work for them for 12 years. And that's how I learned about the profession of dentistry and got me where I am today. But that moment, not even so much the stepping out of it, but the listening to that voice, now I know, like, right? Like, that's a moment that shaped me into, I know to always trust that, to trust that intuition, to trust that voice inside of me. And so this is one of our clients, Dr. Gigi, Livingston Family Orthodontics in Livingston, New Jersey. And what I love about her story and this concept of like, what has shaped you, she's a second generation immigrant. Her parents moved here from India. Her dad was actually a dentist in India, moved over here, immigrated, spent all of his time hustling to just make ends meet, put food on the table, make money, never got his license here in the States, never practiced dentistry again. Gigi goes on to college, studies a computer science degree, goes and gets a consulting job for IBM in downtown New York City, like living the dream, right? Success, goes to school, lands a job with a consulting firm. In the same time, her father passes away. There's this voice inside that says, this is not gonna make you happy long term. She changes course, goes back to dental school, goes on to get her orthodontic training, all to honor her father. It was a moment that shaped her. Watch this.
My dad was very, very charming, affable, likable. I feel like the big thing that he did for me was he imparted a sense of character. And as a parent, that's what you want to do for your child. That's one of your main reasons for being, is how do you teach them those lessons on how to be a good person. I try really hard to be like my dad. But I mean, I have big shoes to fill. I rarely remember him being angry or upset. He was happy to be with us, and he was a hard worker too. In terms of being a good person, he was the best example or type of hero I could have. After going to dental school in India, he decided to come to the US to, basically move his family here. He had to come over first. He had to get into school first, and there's a process of having to be a foreign trained dentist in the United States and how to get credentialed. And you basically have to repeat part of dental school to do it. And I don't know how he did it, and I don't know how he managed to be such a great provider, but he did his job. And, you know, he loved dentistry. He really did. And when I would watch him work and watch him with patients, that's when the seed got planted, I think, as a young child, where this would end up being my career. I got a call on, I believe it was Tuesday, from my brother. And he said, "You have to come home." And I said, "Well, what do you mean I have to come home?" And he said, "Daddy's in the hospital, you have to come home." And I just knew that that was it. I was 22 years old, and I just remember becoming an adult overnight. And these days, you're not an adult at 22. And I just remember months afterwards trying to find meaning out of this complete tragedy for me. So it took a while. There were other hurdles along the way, but I kept on asking myself, I'm either gonna make it or I'm not. So I guess I kind of have to make it. I looked at my life and what I wanted to accomplish, and I knew I wanted to have a family, and I knew that I wanted to find a career that had meaning, and that I wanted to make his passing that there was a legacy. And so I decided, you know what? I'm going back to school. I'll find a way to do it. We'll make it work. And that started my journey to become a dentist and, you know, ultimately an orthodontist. And every day I carry him with me, no matter what I do. You know, when I meet a patient, when I pick up a handpiece, I'm think about my dad. And I mean, maybe I don't practice with him in the sense that he's working alongside me in my office, because that would be amazing. That would be the best thing ever. But I mean, his spirit is kind of in my daily life.
Amazing story, right? Sometimes stories are big, sometimes they're not so much, they're smaller. The size of the story, the dramaticness of the story, right, doesn't always matter. It's about telling something that's authentic to you, all right? Last question I would ask you, what do you want to become? What do you want to see, right? Like, you got into this, you're a dentist, you own a business, a practice. What do you see? What do you want to become? You know, for me, I love, like I said, I love being in the dental profession. For me, it's not about just providing marketing services. This is about a platform. It's about being a voice. I want to be a educational leader in the space. It wasn't enough for me to go, hey, dental marketing is a wreck. It's really bad. I wanted to say, hey, here's also what we can do about it. Like, I know my company can help. I know I can help, but I know lots of people can help. I know that we need to change a profession. I know that changing the story of dentistry is going to take more than just me. It's going to take more than just this company. So how can we get out and lead the way and be a voice? And so we've always produced lots of educational materials. We've tried to educate the industry. We've tried to be a voice, a leader in that space. And so that's what I see. That's what we want to become. These guys, this is Carolina's Dentist in southeastern North Carolina. We recently got to work with a project of theirs. It's a big group practice, about 9 locations. Actually, they're more than that now. But Dr. Clifton Cameron, one of the founders, when I first did a phone call with me, he got into his vision for the group practice space. And obviously groups are growing, and there's different kind of philosophies and strategies to how they do that. He recognized that most solo doctors, most private doctors didn't want anything to do with group practices because of what they were being offered, the amount of control and influence they had, and a lack of ownership. He saw something different and said, I want to create a group that allows a private solo doctor to have ownership, to have influence, to have control. And so we sat down with them. This photo right here was their annual meeting, 250 people in the room at a country club. We went down the day before. It was so much fun. We got to film with their team, with the doctors, the staff, and put together a piece to then show the next day. So I mean, we filmed, edited, turned it around, and showed this video all within 24 hours. They were announcing a new partnership with a bigger group that was going to take them to more and more locations. Here's that video.
Dentists have been upset about the fact that they don't get to participate in the growth of group practice.
We feel like that we've developed a solution that not only protects the tenets of private practice, but then gives the opportunity for existing doctors to become partners, existing doctors to move directly into ownership, and then even into an investment model to where all of us win. One of my mentors for a long time, he was like, you're almost like an arsonist. You're putting a spark in people. You like to sit back and watch it burn. Let's reinvigorate our careers. Let's transform what's going on. Let's light the way. And ultimately, let's change the profession together.
Okay, so that's part of discovering your story. Those three questions. What brings you energy? What are the moments that have shaped you? What do you see? And obviously there's more to it, but those three questions are a really great place to start. And as you go down that road of that path of discovering your story, what it does is it starts to put a human face on your business. One of the great companies that does this out there is Nike. One of their most famous campaigns last year was around football superstar Colin Kaepernick. And I don't know if you remember this campaign or not, but it said, believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. What I loved about this campaign, and it won all of these kinds of awards, and honestly most people, companies would vote this best advertising campaign from all of 2019. But it's because Nike took a heated political and racial issue and they put a human face to it, right? Like they knew that they needed to connect with their demographic. And so they took a shot at this. Nike knows that their main demographic is a 18 to 35-year-old male, most likely with liberal values. They live in urban city centers and they've got discretionary income, right? Like they can drop $200 on a pair of shoes. So they knew that putting out an ad like this would help them connect to that generation, to the next generation of athletes trying to find their voice. They also knew it was going to be a risk. Any campaign like this is going to be risky. The week that this thing went live, their stock value dropped by $1 billion. I mean, that's a big stock drop, right? But Nike was patient. They knew they were in this for the long haul. This wasn't a gimmicky thing to make a quick profit off of. And by the next week, their stock actually rebounded to a higher valuation. I always like to think, like, what if you were the guys on this campaign, right? And you put this thing together, you pitch it, and the board and the executive team goes for it, and then all of a sudden the stock drops by $1 billion, and you're like, man, probably about time to update that LinkedIn resume and get that out there. But Nike is intentional. They think through stuff like this. They put a human face on their marketing, and it won. So, guys, I tell this story. It was a couple years back now, but I was on a new client trip. I was actually flying down to see a potential new client, and we were working on a marketing plan. And I do a little consulting on the side. I work with practices to help them put together strategic plans. And I put together this proposal, and it was budgets and spreadsheets and timelines and deliverables and all this stuff. And I'm walking through it with this client. And he says to me at the end, he says, Josh, I really like you. I'm like, okay, but what's coming? I really like you, but I'm trying to figure out what the return is on all this sexy, fluffy stuff. Like, what's the ROI of a logo? What's the return on investment for this photography session? And at the time I was like, yeah, okay. You're trying not to be offended because you're like, no, this is like the core of who we are. Like, it's not sexy, fluffy stuff. It's story, it's connection, it's human. It's like all these things, right? Big value things. And I was like, no, that's fair. So yeah, let me back up. Let me try to answer this, right? Fair deserves an answer. And so I said, what's the ROI of a logo? I was like, I don't know. Like, what's the ROI of your face? right? Like your face makes you human. Your logo makes your company human. It's like the face of your company to your community. Like, what's the ROI on that? I don't know. Like, what's the return on investment of photography? What's the ROI on high quality photos that show a discretionary health service-based business providing empathetic care? I mean, can we put a dollar value on that? So it was probably a little edgy for sure, that my answer back to him. And we didn't get that client either. But water under the bridge, man, moving on. But the point is, these things, it's putting a face to your business. When you can start to discover that story, now we're putting this humanness to your practice and to your business, all right? Number 1, discover the story. Number 2, tell the story. Tell the story. One of the main ways we're gonna do this is through a concept that I call StorySite. And it's about building a narrative-driven website. Right now, as we stand in 2020, your website is still the hub of your digital environment, your digital presence. Everything comes back to that. Whether people find you on reviews, whether they find you through social media, whether they're finding you through organic SEO or even paid like ads SEO, they are going to go back to your website. Most people click somewhere between 4 to 6 websites. They look at them and they make a decision based on their judgment of that site and how well it connects, right? So I want to talk you through this concept of a story site, because I think this is the key to building an amazing website that connects in 2020. We're going to talk through 4 things. Number 1, it has a values narrative. A story site has a values narrative. Number 2, it has custom photography. We'll get into that. Number 3, it has engaging video. And then last, it is mobile responsive, or it has mobile navigation. All right. These are the 4 main points. Let me just jump into them. Number 1, values narrative. What does that mean? Values are what drive you and your practice. Most likely you've thought about these for your business, you've thought about these with your team, but it's about communicating them. Lots of times when we get into a service-based business, the temptation is to talk about the services, right? Like, here's everything we do. What's better is to talk about the values. Here's how we do. Here's why we do. That's a better way to connect. This is a client of ours, Dr. Elke Chung. She's outside of New York City in Connecticut. And if you can see when you land here on her site, it says right there in the middle, established in 2009 with love and support from family and friends. What does that communicate to you? Like, what are the values that are being communicated through that? She values her family and friends. She started a local business with their support. She's, building a local business. Like, she's integrated into her community. Like, just a line like that says so much about her and her take, her approach on her business. If you go down through the rest of the page, you'll see this, and it says, "We love people. We think you'll love it here." And sometimes, I love the simplicity of that, because I think sometimes we overthink this so much. And I'm like, well, a really good place to start is "we love people and we think you'll love it here," right? Like sometimes we overthink it. And it's funny because we have clients sometimes and they'll email and say, "Josh, just got a cone beam, I just got a CBCT. I need to put this on the website. We need to figure out how to market this." And while I get that whole thing, right? Like, you just dropped 6 figures. I mean, maybe a couple years ago, but you just dropped 6 figures on a CBCT. Now they're less expensive for sure. And you're like, this is an investment. We need to get a return on our investment. Let's put it on the website. At the same time, that's not the point. Getting into services and focusing on services isn't gonna be what connects with people. Does the CBCT live on the website? Yes, completely. Let's put it on the service page. Let's put it there where we're talking about a commitment to technology, all that. But a really good place to start could just be, "We love people. We think you'll love it here," right? Super simple. Dr. Chung sent us this a few months back. She said, also in the comment, how grateful I am for the beautiful website that I had. And look, man, Is it a beautiful website? Yes. Does it convert? Like, that's the question, right? Like, is it effective? Does it get, like, is it gonna do what we set out to do? Beautiful website's one thing. We definitely want it to connect. We want it to result in treatment and you growing the practice. So watch this. I recently had 2 huge cosmetic cases, averaged 30 grand each, come into my practice because of the website. Both patients commented that they knew I was the right doctor to do their case because of the aesthetic and the message of the site. Just wanted to pass that along to you. So 2 people know they need some attention. They've got some complex treatment going on. They're looking for a doctor that they can trust, that they can connect to, that they know can provide the highest value service. They land on her website, they instantly know it, not from her listing out her services, but from her talking about her values. So that's it. Connecting, right? As you're ground marketing and as you're thinking about this, you're constantly driving people back to your site. You may go and introduce yourself. You may have a table somewhere locally. You may meet another business owner, pass out a card. They're going to come back to your site. The best thing you can do is talk about those things. We asked those questions I asked earlier. What gives you energy? What are those moments that have shaped you? What do you see? What do you want to become? Talk about that. Build a site with values. Number 2, custom photography. So we've never produced anything with stock photography. I think you should do the same thing. I think that's a really great step for all of us here in the dental profession, is just make a commitment to use custom photography. This is a practice we work with in the Maryland, DC area. It's called Children's Choice. There's 2 locations, but Dr. Janelle and her team are amazing, fun, energetic. When she first called me, she said, Josh, like, we cut up all the time. Like, we're crazy, we're laughing, we're having a good time. She said, my goal is that every kid that comes in here, that we make them laugh every single time, every single appointment. She's like, is that gonna translate into photography? And I'm like, yes, like, let's do that. Like, I want you guys to be yourself. I want you to laugh. And so we came there and we shot the photography. What happens with custom photos is this principle right here called transference. If you're looking at this photo, you as a parent, if you're looking for a pediatric dentist, you put yourself in this photo right here. You put yourself in this situation. You're standing behind your child, over their shoulder, looking at Dr. Janelle, as she makes your child laugh and tells a joke and cuts up. And as a parent, all of a sudden you go, I made the right choice. This is right. And it puts you at ease. And that's what custom photography does. It allows the patient to put themselves in that situation. It allows them to psychologically map that environment, to see the team, to connect emotions to that. And it puts them at ease, lets them know they're making the right decision. So you can't underestimate custom photography. You and I, like right now, let's decide together, like that's gonna be a huge step in telling a better story of for dentistry. Like, let's not use stock photos anymore. Cool? Like, agreed? Awesome. Pinky promise right there through the camera. Got you. If you wanted to look at Children's Choice, their site, mychildrenschoicedental.com. Dr. J also does a great job on social media. You can check her out over at Instagram at Children's Choice Dental. Third, engaging video. Let's talk about video for a second, because I think right now where we live in 2020, there's no better way to establish trust in a digital environment than with video. And so putting video on your site that's engaging, right? It's high quality, it's a high production value. People ask me all the time, like, can I just shoot video with my cell phone? Your website is a produced environment. We're telling a story, we're controlling the narrative. And while cell phone videos are amazing for social media, it's like, yes, that's where they live. We need something that's produced. We need high quality video for a high quality website. We need video that controls the narrative on a website that we are telling our story through. And so make sure that you are thinking through this. Have a strategy for video. Right now, I think in dentistry, right, like we're in 2020, I think video is a competitive advantage for the next 3 to 5 years. It's starting to pick up speed. We're seeing more and more people get into it. I'll tell you right now, I don't know that I talked to a single, this year, we haven't had a single startup not want to do video. to launch their website. I don't even think I'm exaggerating. I could go look at all of our startups this year. I feel like every single one of them is doing video because they value it and they understand the competitive advantage and they understand the connection that comes through trust. So right now it's an advantage. Do it. You'll help yourself stick out, connect better. At some point down the road, next 5 to 10 years, probably every dental practice is going to have it. So get into it now, connect with your patients that way. Guys, and then last, when it comes to a story site, let's talk about mobile navigation for a second. Right now in the website industry, the term for it is called mobile responsive, is a design standard. That way your website knows whatever device it's on, right? Like it knows if it's on an iPhone, it knows if it's on a Samsung Galaxy, an iPad, it knows if it's vertical, horizontal, and it adjusts accordingly. And so my advice to you is find a company that's mobile first in their design. You can't design a website for a desktop and then just adjust and hope it works good on a mobile. You actually need to design for mobile first, and then of course make sure it looks amazing on a desktop. But somewhere back in 2014, when we first started Studio 88, those stats flipped. So I mean, that was the mobile revolution. It was end of 2013, beginning of 2014. More people now look at a website on a mobile device than they do on a desktop. And I would bet most of you, especially in an urban city center type area, suburban area, gosh, those numbers are up 70, 75, 80, maybe higher than 80% right now. So it doesn't make sense to actually design a site first for desktop anymore, okay? So make sure your website not only looks good when the designers show it to you and the company gives you the mock-up and the proof, don't make sure it doesn't just look good on desktop, pull it over to mobile, make sure it's mobile first in its design, all right? So number one, we talked about discovering the story. Then we talked about telling the story. Now I want to talk to you about sharing the story, all right? Share your story. And this is a great conversation for ground marketing. There's so many ways we can share our story. Usually at this point in the presentation, I'm like, okay, so we've discovered the story, we're telling the story, like the website looks amazing, right? It's this accurate representation now of you and your practice and the patient experience. Well, now it makes sense to get attention to that website. So we can rely on organic SEO, but we can also get some paid traffic coming there. We can do some Google ads, some Facebook ads, some Facebook remarketing. We can boost posts. We can do all the stuff to get traffic back. And a lot of times we talk about digital ads. But today with you guys, I want to talk about ground marketing. How to share your story through ground marketing. We've got this amazing website, we've got our story. How do we get out in the community and share it? So before I get into that, let me talk to you about what I call psycho marketing. It's really the psychological process of authentic marketing, okay? So here's how marketing works. Number one, pre-existing worldviews happen first. So a patient comes into your practice, they have a picture of what dentistry looks like to them. Like it's their existing worldview. It's a frame. It's like they go, hey, this is what dentistry is to me. And we've all talked to these patients, you know? It's based on how they were brought up, their socioeconomic status, their experience with a dental practice and a dentist, their parents' values around dentistry and healthcare, okay? So they walk in with their pre-existing worldview. Number two, something new gets attention. So patient walks in and says, this is my view of dentistry, but they walk in, the practice smells amazing, the landscaping looks awesome, there's like spa noises going on, maybe there's a water element, and they go, oh, this is different, right? Like this is their picture, but what they walked into was not that. Like it wasn't congruent with that, and all of a sudden it gets their attention. Their radar goes up and like, what? This is different, okay? Number three, now the first impressions start to tell this story. So they walk in, it smells amazing. Lisa at the front desk says, hi, Mrs. Jones, so glad that you're here today. And Mrs. Jones is like, how does she know my name? You know? And so you have this opportunity now to start telling the story through the first impression, the way that they're interacted with, greeted with, that whole beginning of the experience. Number four, good marketing tells stories we believe. And then ultimately, marketing with authenticity thrives, it wins, right? So patient walks in, here's what we think dentistry is. You say, that's great. Here, you kind of turn the frame around. You're like, here, we look at it like this. That first impression starts the story. If it's a story that's believable, awesome. Like that's what wins. And then ultimately that story, if it's authentic and it gets played out, it's not just something that's believable that we put out there, but we don't live it. We actually live it. It's authentic. Now you're gonna win long term, right? So when we look at the path of a new patient, this is how this happens. Let's say you're out doing your ground marketing. You got your hustle on. You're out in the community. You got your table set up. You're out there hustling. Your ground marketing, you're getting attention, right? Like patients are coming up, they've got their worldview. You're making this first impression. You're getting the attention. You're starting the story because it's different. Then whatever you interact with, you give them a business card, you give them something, they go back, they look at your website. That continues the narrative. So you had this first impression, you got their attention, started the story with them in person. Now they go back to your website. The whole point of your website is to continue the narrative. You probably couldn't get all that across to them in that in-person meeting, right? Like you're at a table, sometimes you've got like a couple seconds, you can put something in their hand, you've got 1 sentence, 2 sentences. The best you're gonna do often, most times, is start the story. Let the website continue the narrative. From there, what's the point? They go to the website. What's the point of the website? Like, what's the next step? Where are we trying to get them to go? New patient call, right? Like they met you, they go to the website to see, and some of their ways that they're trying to see if it's believable. Like, okay, what's the real story here? But the point of the website is to get them to call and come into the practice. So they pick up, they call Lisa, they get an appointment. The story is now believable. Like they met you, started the story, they got to the website, it continued the story. Now it's even more believable because Lisa is telling the same thing. So by the time they get into the practice, they've had this authentic experience, and now you've probably got a new patient for a very long time because you handled your marketing right, okay? So how to share your story through ground marketing. I'm super excited about this. I literally last week, I was like brainstorming this, like how would I do this? How would I advise somebody to share their story through ground marketing? This is literally never a presentation I've never given before. So we get to hang out and talk about this today. But I think it's fun. I think this is some areas that we actually know a lot about here at Studio 88 and what we do. So just want to give you kind of my thoughts and my advice. I think there's 3 ways that you can go about sharing your story through ground marketing. We're gonna talk about each of these, but number 1 is swag. Everybody loves some good swag, right? So we're gonna talk about that. We do our own swag, and it's so much fun. Have a lot of fun with it. But I'll give you some keys there to creating some really good swag, because swag is supposed to get attention, right? Like on that whole psycho marketing steps chart. So the purpose of swag is to get attention. Patients come in with their worldview. The swag goes, oh, this is different. I've never seen a dental office with sweet swag before. So it's just different. It gets attention. Number 2, we're gonna talk about a tagline. I like to call it the hook. Like, what's the hook? Some people call it a motto or the one-liner or whatever. But like, what's that hook? What's that one-liner that starts the story? So a lot of times that tagline is your first impression. You put a cool piece of swag in their hand, you get attention. Now we've got 1 sentence, maybe 2. What do we tell them to start the story? And then last, the print piece. Usually human one-on-one interactions always do best with a print piece, something you can put in their hands. That will continue the story. More important, it will remind them later to go to the website where they can continue that narrative, all right? So ground marketing, swag, tagline, print piece. I didn't run these by Michael, so hopefully, Michael, this is okay. I got your approval. Talk about this stuff. Hope it lines up, bro. All right, swag. Swag is more important than just chapstick with your logo. Come on, chapstick's fine. Great swag is a storyteller. We could probably I could have just wrapped up the whole thing right there. I could have gone on camera and said, great swag is a storyteller, and been like, boom, drop the mic, and we're just out, right? I feel like we should create a hashtag around that, like swag is a storyteller type of a thing. It is, and that's why you're doing it. You're not doing it just to if you think like just putting logo on a chapstick is the end goal, you're missing the bigger vision of actually what swag is, and it's to tell a story. So great swag is, number one, it's useful. Number two, it's reusable. And number three, it's high quality. All right, so some of the goals we're trying to accomplish when we produce swag, give them something that's useful. I mean, granted, chapstick is useful. I'm not saying you shouldn't do chapstick. I'm just kind of using that because it's universal. I love chapstick. It needs to be usable, which it is. Give them something that's reusable. One-time swag pieces are just going to be less valuable to your brand, what you're trying to do, create the brand recognition, the brand equity. And then high quality, okay, is a must. We're going to talk about that. Some stats for you, swag stats. Hashtag swag stats. 56% have a more positive impression of that business after swag. Come on. Like 56% of people have it. I've got the sources for these too. These are not just marketing stats that marketers throw up and it's like, what does that mean to just support a point, right? Email me and I'll give you the sources on these. They're reputable like marketing studies. 56% of people have a more positive impression of your business after their experience with your swag. This is why we do it. This is why you go to trade shows and there's billions of dollars spent on cheap crap that we put in a bag and everybody takes home and throws away because everybody knows this. 56%, right? 88% remember the company after swag. I mean, you want to talk about brand recognition, you want to talk about name recognition, like getting your name in front of people, them having this favorable experience and remembering who you are. They may never end up on your website. You give them a piece of swag, and if it's decent, 88% of people will remember you.